This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. Welcome to the show. So glad that you tuned into our program today. My email address is jason@sportspectrum.com, jason@sportspectrum.com. You can email me. Have any guest ideas, any inquiries regarding Sports Spectrum? Maybe you just have a thought about today's interview with Molly McManimie, NFL player agent. You can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we are presented today by IJM, the International Justice Mission, believing every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. They're helping to protect more than 150 million people around the world from violence and oppression. And this is a great ministry to get involved with. You can learn more right now by going to the website ijm.org/TF and become a Freedom Partner, ijm.org/TF. We're also presented today by Compassion International, releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name. Over 70,000 children might be left without a sponsorship because of COVID-19, and Compassion is doing something about it, teaming up with pro athletes to help fill a stadium toward a year of needed funding. You can learn more right now at Compassion's website, compassion.com/teamup, compassion.com/teamup, and help release a child from poverty today. Really excited to welcome Molly McManimie to Sports Spectrum, NFL player agent. She is the Vice President of Client Services with Caric Sports Management, and Steve Caric is her boss and the president of the company. And Steve and I go back to like 2008, 2009, during my time at ESPN and having worked with a few of his clients and helped bring a few of his clients some opportunities at ESPN. I've known Steve for a long time, have a ton of respect for him, and excited to bring Molly McManimie, one of Steve's co-workers, to Sports Spectrum, living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and working with NFL players, one of the few female NFL player agents in the business. And we talk about her story and her journey, and it's a real good one today on the show. Her journey to sports, battling with the ego that comes with achievement, that comes with accomplishment, and really beginning to find her purpose, her true purpose in being an NFL player agent, and it's bigger than herself. You're going to love this story. Molly McManimie from Caric Sports Management joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Molly, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so good to see you. So good to talk to you. I want to start with your role with Caric Sports, Vice President of Client Services, which I know titles can be just what they are, titles in a lot of ways. But what does that role entail? What do you do? Why don't you share with our audience, starting off with the role that you have with Caric Sports?
So my role, I have two roles basically, but they kind of intersect. I am the Vice President of Client Services, like you mentioned, which basically houses all of our clients. So I have only been a player agent for 3 years now. It'll be 3 years next month. And so before I was able to become certified and start signing my own clients and representing my own clients, I was the client services manager, which just meant that anything that we needed done from one day to the next, I took on. And, you know, I work under Steve Caric, who's our president, and he's an agent, obviously, and the president. So he does a lot of the same tasks I do, but I got brought on initially to help him out with the increasing load he was dealing with by getting more clients, which is a positive thing. So he brought me on in order to be able to deliver the type of service that our company likes to deliver, which is quality service and making every client feel like our only client. So that's how I initially got brought into the business. And then my role has just kind of expanded from there to where I can take care of almost anything at this point because of the experience that I have under Steve and throughout these last 5 years. So that could be anything from, like, this morning I got a text from a client that his rental car died in his NFL city and he had a drug test he had to get to, but his rental car was dead. So those are the types of things that I get, even if, you know, they're technically signed under Steve. But I also do things like marketing deals. And I go out not only and find them, but I also negotiate the terms. I help write up and execute the contracts. And then I also just help execute the whole deals from start to finish. So those social media deals you see where guys are, posting sponsored posts and ads, I'll help with those. So it's a wide range of things.
Yeah.
And then of course I'm an agent as well. So now I have my own clients under my own little umbrella. And so I also am doing agent work every day for those guys. The stuff that maybe Steve does for his guys, now I'm doing, of course, negotiating their contracts, but also managing their injuries. If they get cut, I'm the point person that teams call to get them in for workouts. So a little bit of everything.
And a Monday after an NFL weekend is what? Because right now this is going to run in sometime 4 or 5 weeks into the NFL season. And I mentioned to you before we started recording, damage control is part of that role, but guys getting injured, opportunities coming for other people. What is that like? Just even the first day or two after a game?
So yeah, Monday mornings are actually probably our busiest time and the most crucial time as an agent, because first of all, if you get to Monday morning, assuming you don't have clients playing, we do have clients playing tonight, but assuming we didn't, to get to Monday morning with everyone healthy, that is a victory. No matter how they played, no matter who won, who lost, to just make it to Monday morning and not be dealing with injuries, that is your number one priority as an agent and the biggest, sigh of relief. But also damage control, because, guys who don't play well, you have to manage that if they lost. You have to kind of be in their corner and hype them up again. And on the reverse side, if, there's a guy out of work and you saw injuries happen over the weekend at that position, now you're going to be focused on reaching out to those teams in order to put your client's name in front of them. So when they're looking to replace that injured player, your client is, at the top of their mind. So a lot of things on Monday mornings that I don't think the average fan thinks about. They just see, they think their team won or lost. That's it. Victory Monday or a disappointing Monday. But for us, it's very much just tying up the loose ends from the weekend and looking forward to next week.
A few weeks back, you tweeted Molly Mack is your Twitter name with 2 L's or 3 L's, I should say.
3 L's, yeah.
I like how you did that. That's smart. You tweeted, when people tell me they want to become an agent, I wish I could somehow show them a real glimpse of cut weekend. It doesn't matter what you accomplish or who you are in this business. It never gets easier when things don't go a guy's way. And I know cut weekend, that's in usually late August, early September, before the season, obviously, but that is a hard one because guys are preparing all off season. This off season was obviously a crazy one, but preparing all off season, going through training camps, and then they get cut. Can you kind of share and describe what that day is like for you?
Yeah, so cut weekend really starts, midweek. You'll start to see some of the bigger contracts especially get cut. Teams start to figure out where they need to make room and maybe where they can, move some money around. And if you're one of those veteran players, you're even at risk, because if your contract is one that they think they could, really utilize that space, you're at risk, just like the guys who are fighting just for a roster spot. So really, it's nerve-wracking for everyone except maybe, Tom Brady and
right.
Patrick Mahomes. But so it starts kind of midweek, but by Friday is when you really start to get the big haul. And ever since a couple years ago, when they took out that mid preseason cut, where now it goes this year it was 80 to 53, but it's usually 90 to 53. You're talking about a lot of guys losing their job within 48 hours. And so Friday you start to get it. And honestly, as an agent, I would prefer my client, they're going to get cut Friday, because the sooner teams know they're available, the more opportunity is going to be out there for them to either be signed to a practice squad or be claimed on waivers. If you're one of those guys that, unfortunately, like we had a guy last year get cut Monday. He made the 53. The team, found someone they needed more on waivers. And so to make room, they cut him Monday morning. That's a bummer, because that player now, the teams have all gone through waivers a few times. They're back at 53. Practice squads are full. That's just really a crappy position to be in. So the whole weekend, really it lasts till Monday night when, practice squads are set. Teams are moving into week 1 practice. From that, Thursday night through that Monday night, you're just sitting waiting for either good news or bad news. Even the guys, besides, the real locks on every team, that make it don't usually know for sure until later in the day, Saturday. I do like that I'm on Pacific time because it's at 1:00 for us out here, not 4:00. So we at least have the whole afternoon to kind of figure out what's next for the guys who get cut. But I mean, like this year I got called at 5 a.m. by Green Bay that they were cutting my client, and that's how I started my Saturday. And so it really is one of those weekends where you think everyone looks at your social media and they think of an agent, and they think of Jerry Maguire and all these representations, but I don't think people think about those moments where, you're getting the call at 5 a.m. and then you just have to be like, all right, like what's next? And on top of that, while you're trying to go to work and get your guys another job, you have to manage their anxieties and their, uncertainty of what's happening and their disappointment. So it's a lot of things that happen all at once. And I think our role in that is to not let our anxiety, get onto them, and we bring them some peace to the situation, no matter, what way it goes.
So you're pouring into these clients and you're giving all you got. Who's pouring into you? Like, how do you stay fed? And we'll talk about the spiritual journey in a minute and your faith and the importance of that. But how is that even possible? Like, I guess Steve Caric would probably be one, but is it hard to, you feel like you're emptying the tank every day, and what's refilling it, right?
I think that varies from day to day and year to year. But yeah, I think to start to where what you pointed out, I think having a boss, mentor, friend in Steve, I wouldn't be in this business without him, but I also wouldn't be surviving it. It's so important to have people around you, not only in your office in particular, but in the business in general, who really want the best for you, but also just allow you sometimes to be disappointed. Right. But also, with Steve, he's been in this business for 20 years. So he's had so many players cut. And I've been lucky enough to see so many success stories just in the 5 years I've been doing this from guys who have been cut. I mean, most guys at some point are going to get cut. So when you just kind of realize that's part of it, you don't take it as hard. For us, we have to really kind of become numb to it and not let the appointment overtake us. But, beyond Steve, I'm very lucky to have friends like, we were just talking about Kelly Masters. I'm great friends with Nicole Lynn, and, we've all experienced highs and lows in this business, and having them as a sounding board is really helpful because, we're competing in one way, yes, but we also know how hard this is, and there's so few people who really understand that struggle, that it's important to form those friendships that go beyond the, competitive nature of what this business entails. But on top of that, I have a very, very great supportive family, and they know when draft and cut weekend come around, I'm fragile. Yeah. I mean, draft weekend this year, it was in quarantine, I had so many deliveries to my house. It felt like my birthday. I had dessert, and my sister sent me dinner, and I had someone send me champagne after my guy got drafted. And I mean, it was like an overflow of love. And so and I think the reason that I feel that love is because I'm honest with those people about that weekend. So I up front tell them, this is going to be a struggle. Help me through it, and then we'll get to the other side.
Quick break to tell you about our sponsors today, IJM, the International Justice Mission, believing every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. And I want to take a moment to tell you about the great work that IJM is doing. And what many people don't realize right now is that violence is a threat to so many around the world who are poor. It's as much a part of daily life as hunger, disease, or homelessness. And it's often overlooked, but not by IJM. They believe, and we believe, that every person deserves to be safe and free from violence. And by partnering with local authorities to rescue victims of violence, bring criminals to justice, restore survivors, and strengthen justice systems, IJM is helping to protect more than 150 million people from violence across the world. But they cannot do this alone. They need your help. This is such important work that cannot be done without the help of people like Freedom Partners, some of IJM's most loyal partners in the work of justice. And their support of $24 or more each month helps survivors of slavery and violence from the moment they're rescued until they're fully restored. You can join the fight right now and become a Freedom Partner with IJM by going to the website ijm.org/TF. ijm.org/TF to become a Freedom Partner today. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And you can team up right now with professional athletes and Compassion International to fill the stadium. And what that means is 70,000 children have been left without a sponsor because of COVID-19. That is the capacity of an average NFL stadium. So we want to help fill the stadium with a year of needed funding for these critical next 12 months. So you can donate right now to help these children and release them from poverty. You can go to the website, compassion.com/teamup, compassion.com/teamup, and donate and help release a child from poverty today. Molly McManimie is our guest on Sports Spectrum. We are the intersection of sports and faith. So let's intersect the conversation a little bit with your faith, the importance of your faith. I know you have Mark 9:23, all things are possible to him who believes. That's listed on your Twitter page. Tell us about that faith, how it guides you, how it directs you, and maybe where it even started.
So I actually have it tattooed on my wrist too.
Very cool.
It's so like a lot of my stories I feel like are so anticlimactic and like just not interesting. But I actually, back when I was in high school, my dad had a calendar hanging in our house that for every month had a different verse. And this was one of the verses. And you know, sometimes you read a verse and it just kind of hits you. And you just feel the power of the words. And sometimes it comes in a worship song. Sometimes it comes when you just read the Bible, or maybe the pastor puts it up at church. But just reading it in that moment, something felt powerful about it. And so I just clung to it. And I have always had the mentality of, I've just always felt like I was capable of anything. And I don't say that to sound cocky or conceited. I just have never really felt limitations. And so it kind of struck a chord in me. And, you know, I left home right after high school. I was only 17. I was one of the younger people in my grade. And so I never looked back. You know, I left home, I did college, law school, went straight through. I decided I want to be an agent at 19, and I became an agent, I think, at 25. And so I just feel like it's one of those anchoring verses for me. And I actually got it tattooed on me when I was 19. And I love having it there because it just reminds me that when you don't think about everything you're trying to accomplish just as you, and you kind of take yourself out of it, and you remember you're serving a greater purpose, and you remember you serve a God that is limitless, it just makes you feel so equipped for everything. And it's exciting. I just think it's exciting when you think about it that way.
That's cool. Where did God start directing you to be a player agent? Because obviously there are very few female NFL player agents in the business. You mentioned Kelly, you mentioned Nicole, and you know, I've known Kelly for a lot of years and had the opportunity to get to know her really well, and she's the real deal and she's great. Where does that stem from? Because it's almost like God is saying to you, okay, go pursue this opportunity that a lot of people who are like Molly McManimie don't end up in. So what's that story?
So I would say, you know, to be completely blunt and honest, back then, so when I decided to become an agent, it was after a conversation I had with my dad's corporate attorney at the time. And I just wanted to find a way to intersect going to law school and sports. And it clicked for me. And so, you know, I really didn't even pray about it. I think I wanted to do it for reasons that would feed my ego, and for just reasons that were pleasurable. You know, football was a passion for me, but I never really asked myself, like, what is the bigger calling of this? And then so first off, the craziest thing about how I got my job and how I know God has placed me here is I went to law school with the idea to become an agent, but law school's tough, and I went through my 1L, and honestly, I just kind of abandoned the idea. I can't even tell you, it didn't happen in a moment. It just, over time, I abandoned this dream. And I thought to myself, it's impossible and I should go towards more realistic things. A career in the law is not, something to frown upon. And
Sure.
honestly, I wanted to make a lot of money. Again, ego stuff. And so I was going into my 3L, which is your last year of law school. And I went through probably the hardest week of my life I've had some harder ones, but at that point, and I had some health issues in my family, and I came back. It was June of 2015, again, going into my last year. And the next day after I got back from this trip, which was the trip from hell, I went to my first session of my negotiations summer school class. And at that point, I had done an internship with the PD. I was in an internship currently, which was more of a nonprofit type internship. And so I was gearing my education towards public interest, which I'm still very happy I did. I did some really cool work. But I'm in that class, and the teacher or professor, asked us, "Why are you in negotiations?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a PD, and 90-something% of cases don't go to trial; they're plea deals. So I have to learn how to negotiate for my client." The girl next to me said, "I want to be an NFL agent," and I looked at her and I was like, I remember when I wanted to do that. That's kind of weird. And then after class, for the first time in probably 2 years, I said it out loud to someone. I said, I used to want to be an NFL agent. That was originally why I came to law school. Went home. The next morning, Steve had tweeted me. I had never met him, didn't know who he was, didn't follow him. He tweeted me the next morning and said, "I'm looking to hire someone for my company. Someone gave me your name." We exchanged DMs. He interviewed me over the phone, hired me. A year later, I moved out to Vegas to work full time. And now the rest is history. And Steve and I have racked our brains for 5 years now. And he has no idea how he got my name. Wow. He said it was on his desk. And, we have some mutual connections. And my dad had a place in Vegas. So he thinks maybe someone thought I lived there. I had mentioned it. I was kind of involved with the sports law stuff at Chapman, but not really. But we still don't know for sure. And so for me, it was just this moment where God just smacked me in the face and was like, "I got you." I had just gone through the hardest thing in my life. And he was just like, "I got you." And I took the job, on the spot, basically on the phone with Steve. I walked into my internship later on that summer and just said, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to work in sports." That was it. And I've never looked back. So that's a long-winded way of just saying initially, God put it on my heart, but I didn't even, really ask him to. And then it's just funny how you can try to get off course. And then he had to make it so clear to me that he was saying, "No, this is what you're going to do. And I'm going to give you this opportunity to do it." And it's still to me the wildest thing. It gives me goosebumps every time I think about it, because it's just so blatantly God.
I laugh because I have a similar story, which I'll share another time or offline. It's just too long, but a very similar story of how I ended up leaving ESPN to go to Sports Spectrum with a connection. And the guy's name happens to be named Steve, different Steve. I'm just kind of shaking my head, smiling, thinking about it. But that's a great story, Molly. I love that. So you become this sort of person in the sports business world, right? Working as an NFL player agent eventually. I know that takes a little while to get certified. So talk to me about wrestling with your faith through this, because this isn't glamorous. We mentioned this earlier, the just cut day alone would drive many people, I would imagine, away from a job like this, because you're dealing with so much just in a couple days span with careers and personalities and livelihoods for so many of these guys. I've gotten the privilege to work and talk to many NFL players, and I know it's glamorous on some levels and it's ugly on a lot of other levels. So can you walk me through maybe just a time, I don't know if it's wrestling with your faith or you had this sort of push-pull where your faith kind of had to guide you through some you might have even alluded to it a little bit, but some difficult moments since coming into this industry?
Yeah, I mean, even just as an example, yesterday alone, again, my day started yesterday, 5 a.m., get a phone call that a team's not signing my client. The day ends with another one of my clients scoring his first career touchdown. It is like, that is a microcosm of this industry. You are down and then you are up and then you are down. And it really is something that I tell everyone all the time, you can't just love sports. That's not enough to make it in this industry, because you will get broken from those hard moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, right after becoming certified, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it doesn't help with social media when you see, other agents, either, young ones like me or other women or just agents in general, and you're seeing them have success and being named to these lists and being recognized by this and that. And I was getting so caught up in that, and I was putting so much pressure on myself. In my first full year of recruiting, I signed my first client, but he didn't get drafted. And so for me, it was still just a victory to sign anybody, but I lost out on a client who ended up going in the 3rd round. And I kept thinking, oh, what if, what could be? And I had sort of a come to Jesus moment, and I don't know what triggered it or sparked it, but about a year ago, almost exactly, I just kind of said, I don't like how I'm feeling, and how much my ego is driving me right now. And I just said, like, I am done with these lists, these acknowledgement. I don't care what lists I get named to. I literally just said, I want God to have me sign the players that he wants me to sign, and put me in those players' lives who need it the most. And I don't care if that is undrafted guys, 1st-round picks. I don't care if I have 2 clients or 20 clients. I just want my work to be meaningful. And I can't tell you the weight that just lifted off of me, because I just realized it is not like, who cares about lists and worldly accolades and stuff. It's just not about that. And about the same time, I started a discipleship program at my church. And that was so incredibly helpful for me, because the whole, a discipleship program is teaching you how to be a disciple.
Yeah.
It was more like a more intense Bible study, basically. And you do it in a small group, and it teaches you basically to intersect your life, everyday life, with serving Jesus, versus just, praying here and praying there, going to church. Like, how can your everyday life glorify God and work towards that purpose? And it all just kind of happened at a perfect time. And actually at the end of it, you had the option, if you wanted, at the celebration, to get baptized. And I did. So I got baptized November 15th that last year. I was baptized as a baby. But I always felt this pull, like every time I was at church and I saw people get baptized, I was like, I just feel like I need to like proclaim this as an adult. Yes. And it ended up being the perfect situation, because it was just the people from, it's called Rooted. I don't know if you've heard of it, but that's the program I did. Mm-hmm. It was just my Rooted group there and some other people inside this big auditorium. My family wasn't there. They all knew about it, but they weren't there. It wasn't this big to do. It wasn't like we went out to brunch after, and I was in leggings and a t-shirt and looked like this. And I mean, it ended up being the weekend I ran a half marathon. So it was this like emotional weekend for me. I know. It was the best weekend of my life. And through that time in that program, I just really focused on becoming like the agent God needed me to be, not the agent I wanted to be. And, at the end of that last year, I signed my first draft pick, and he has exceeded all expectations, up until even yesterday, scoring. He's the first Chargers running back since LaDainian Tomlinson to score in his rookie debut.
Very cool.
It's been almost 20 years since, and just, I mean, if I won't go into it totally now, but just even us coming together as a team, him and I, it just is all God. And I know now why God had me wait for him to be my first draft pick. It makes so much sense now. And it's such a good experience for me to look back on, to say like, trust in God, but also like just to communicate every step of the way in my journey. Cause I still feel my ego pull at me a lot. It's a hard industry to not get caught up in your ego. But I just pray through it, and it kind of brushes right off of me. And I can truly say, like, I don't care about those same things I used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what is it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul, I think is the verse that comes to my mind in Mark 8. And
Yes.
that's such a great encouragement for those listening, because we have a lot of people who listen who either work in sports, love sports, followers of Christ, and aren't sure about the push-pull between the world and living out their faith. So thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing story. I just want to ask, it's really a simple question, but I think there's so many layers to your answer here. How hard is it? How tough is it to be a woman working in this industry as a player sports agent? I remember talking to Kelly Masters, gosh, this was 6 years ago, I think, where were we? In Arizona at the Super Bowl, the year the Seahawks and Patriots were in the Super Bowl. And we had
Yep.
lunch or dinner, and I was just asking her, like, how difficult is it in this business? And she was going, and we spent like 2 hours, and she was sharing me some stories, and I was shaking my head like, oh my gosh, this exists. So within as much details as you want to give, how hard is it to be a female player agent in the NFL?
Well, first of all, it's hard to be an agent, period. I mean, I go through the same trials and tribulations that Steve does. And not only is he a man, but he's an experienced, well-respected agent. And,
Absolutely.
it's still hard for him every year to find success in this business. And that's not discrediting him. That's just saying it's hard for anybody.
Yeah.
Whether you're Lee Steinberg, Drew Rosenhaus, it's hard to sign players and it's hard to keep players because there is a lot of expectation on their end. And then, being a woman is tough. And on top of that, I'm 29 now, but when I first started recruiting guys, I was 25, 26. And so, the initial trying to get people to take me seriously is tough. But, I don't think I could do a job that was not inherently challenging. I just don't think I would be satisfied. It's just not who I am. And I think I try to focus more on the positive of the fact that I'm probably the only woman, some of these guys meet with throughout the season. So they're going to remember me. It's up to me whether that, memory is good or bad, but they're going to remember me. And when they see, I say, hey, my name is Molly, lost in this sea of people who look and say the same things. I bring something different. Yeah. And so to me, that's a positive. And I try to lean into that. And I try to distinguish myself and not try to just be one of the guys and be exactly like everything else that they already have available to them. Because truly what I found, through my both spiritual and just, regular journey in this business is I want to give guys a different option. And that's not going to be for everybody, but I at least want it to be available to them. I want them to be able to have something different than what's been available for the last 50 years in this business. And so I try to lean into my femininity and I try to lean into the things that make women unique. If you ask a lot of men who, like in your life, who gets, what done, usually it's their mom or their wife. Women just, we know what we're doing.
Yes, you do.
And so you get through that initial hurdle of them taking you seriously. I usually think they actually really enjoy my meetings and stuff. They might not always sign with me, but I think they always leave respecting me and they always leave happy that they at least took the meeting. And so I think this job is just hard as it is. In general, it just is such a cutthroat business. And like I said in that tweet that you read earlier, it doesn't matter who you are or what you accomplish. The hard things never go away. And that's signing players. That's dealing with their disappointment, dealing with their family's disappointments. When a player gets cut and they're out of work, you don't just have the player reaching out to you, hey, is anything going on? You sometimes have their wife or their mom, and you feel that weight. And on one hand, it's an honor that you have that responsibility, but on the other, it's tough. Yeah. I had a great year this year with, my guy getting drafted, but that, 2021 is a whole new year. And every year you kind of have to restart and say, I have to go even harder because once you get a little success too, now people know who you are and you're going to now be dealing with them also trying to, impede on that momentum that you're building.
Yeah. Molly McManimie has been our guest here on Sports Spectrum. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here. You, one last quote as we finish up our conversation. You mentioned, I think it was on Twitter, that you wrote, rejection is just redirection. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I love that in the scope of what you do, but I feel like that's a moniker for 2020 for so many of us, if not all of us, with what's happened in 2020 with everything going on between a pandemic and racial unrest and a political climate that's just a mess and so much going on. My closing question, though, for you, Molly, is what has the Lord shown you and taught you in 2020? It's going to be a wide-ranging, a lot of things that you can think about with 2020 and all that's taken place. But what's the great lesson the Lord has shown you within the redirection of what we've seen in 2020?
I'll kind of go back to what I said about, Joshua Kelly being, worth the wait. And I say often, and this is even rings true for his story, and I won't go totally into it because it's too long. The short story is he had one offer coming out of high school, went to UC Davis, left the school and had to walk on, bang down the door at UCLA to get into there, comes out, was supposed to be like a 6th, 7th round pick, ends up going in the 4th round, and now is on a team that really values him. And I think he and I's stories are alike in the sense that the right yes is worth waiting for. And I will go through a million no's to get to the right yes and to get to the yes that God wants for me. I don't want the yeses that come from the wrong place. And I'll tell you what, those happen in this business where you get caught up in, again, the ego stuff, and you maybe go into business with people that don't fit your values. And so for him and it's real. And that I love that. Again, I could go into our whole thing a million times, but yeah, the right thing is worth waiting for, and the right yes is worth waiting for. And that can mean, it doesn't just mean in business. It also means in your relationships and, both romantically and friendship wise, or maybe it's, a house you're trying to buy, or there's so many things that, God has us wait for. And a lot of times to get to that thing that you want in any aspect of your life, you're going to face rejection and you're going to get told no. But being told no is closing the door so that you can move on and get to the right yes. So I think for me, that's one of the biggest lessons of 2020. The second is that everything can be taken away from us at any moment. And the only thing that can't is God. Mm-hmm. That is the only constant. And I never thought I would live through a time where he made it so abundantly clear. And I'm pretty positive it's on purpose. And it's shown me truly there's things this year that have been taken from us, even if we just, talk about sports, that we never thought we'd see March Madness get canceled. Like what? Yeah, exactly. We never thought we'd see college football get canceled, but here we are. I would have a year ago told you that there's nothing in this world that would stop college sports. Yeah. And here we are. And so it's just a lesson that, the only constant that we have is God. And sometimes we have to have everything stripped away. And so that we remember that's truly all we actually have.
She is Molly McManimie, NFL player agent. She's working with Steve Caric and Caric Sports Management. This has been a treat, Molly. Great to meet you. Great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us here on the show.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Great stuff there from Molly McManimie, NFL player agent and the Vice President of Client Services with Caric Sports Management out there in Nevada and Las Vegas. And Molly's great. She's got a great story. I love her passion, and I love her unashamed boldness for the gospel. And I love her honesty in battling the ego. I've heard it said ego is easing God out, EGO. And Molly admits that for many years she was chasing the success, chasing the money, and trying to feed her ego. And when she found her true purpose, and I love the story of her getting baptized and getting rooted in a discipleship group called Rooted. Really cool stuff. Love seeing her journey progress. And listen, she's still, what did she say? She was 29. She's got a amazing career ahead of her, and it's going to be fun to watch and follow her journey. Molly McManimie joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Great stuff from Molly. We also appreciate our sponsors today, our partners, IJM, the International Justice Mission. Check them out at ijm.org/TF. Join the fight to end slavery in our lifetime. And of course, Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry, releasing children from poverty. You can help make that difference right now in a child's life by going to compassion.com/teamup. A year of needed funding to get these kids sponsored because of COVID-19. You can make that difference right now by going to compassion.com/teamup. We also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com. All of our content can be found there. And then whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on, we would love for you to do two things. Do us a favor and click subscribe. That way you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. We got a ton of them out there. We're releasing 3 to 4 a week, new content pretty much every other day. So clicking subscribe allows you to never miss what we're releasing here with the Sports Spectrum podcast. And then do us one last favor and tell someone you know about this podcast. Let them know about Sports Spectrum, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation and intersect it with the world of sports. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast with Molly McManimie, and we're thankful to you for listening. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. My name is Jason Romano. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.